I never expected my own family to steal my spotlight. Yet there I was, frozen in the doorway of the dining room. My portfolio slipping from my fingers, scattering months of economic reports across my mother's polished hardwood floor. The sound of papers hitting the ground barely registered, muffled beneath the surreal tableau unfolding before me. Bianca stood tall beside the mahogany china cabinet, one hand lifted in a graceful arc as if conducting an invisible orchestra. And before my brilliant sister shares her economic insights, she projected to an imaginary audience. Let me warm up the crowd with a few words about our family's charitable legacy. Her tone was smooth, rehearsed, the kind that drew nods of approval from strangers. Mother, seated at the head of the table, beamed with satisfaction. Perfect tone. Darling. Not too formal, just the right balance. They were so absorbed in their performance. Neither noticed me arrive early for the dinner, supposedly a celebration of my achievement, being chosen as keynote speaker at next month's International Aid Foundation Gala. It was Mother who spotted me first. Her smile flickered for half a second, then brightened with practiced warmth. Odette, you're early. Bianca turned, surprise flashing across her face before morphing into that all-too-familiar look of pity. Don't be shocked, she said lightly. You'll freeze up there without help. The words landed like a stone in my chest. Dredging up an old wound. I was 12, poised at the piano for my Christmas recital solo. Weeks of practice had built to that moment, until Bianca appeared on stage. Clutching her violin. Honey, Bianca will join you, Mother announced proudly. They always perform better together. I'd been sidelined in my own moment before the first note was struck. Father's refrain echoed through my memory. Bianca has the charm. Odette has the brains. They need each other. That narrative had shadowed every milestone. My scholarship dinner was eclipsed by Bianca's student council victory. My graduate acceptance overshadowed by her engagement party. I crouched to gather my scattered reports, fingers trembling against the crisp paper. This time, though, something burned beneath the disappointment, a heat I didn't recognize. This is my invitation, I said, my voice steadier than expected. The organizers asked for me, alone. Mother's smile tightened. She exchanged a glance with Bianca before rising to fuss with the table settings. Don't be selfish, dear. Bianca can help warm up the crowd. It isn't selfishness, I countered, stacking the pages neatly, marveling at the steadiness of my hands. It's about respecting the fact that I was chosen for my expertise. Bianca swirled her wine glass, her expression soft but edged with condescension. But you get nervous, remember? Last year's economics conference, you practically whispered your findings. I stood taller, clutching the portfolio to my chest like armor. I've been working with a speaking coach. I don't need an introduction. Just then, the front door creaked open. Father entered, briefcase in one hand, champagne in the other. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was brutal. Is everyone ready to celebrate our keynote speaker? We were just discussing the presentation format. Mother replied smoothly. Bianca has offered to introduce Odette. Excellent idea, Father said, already moving to the bar cart. Just a short introduction. Odette, it takes the pressure off. I looked at them. 3 figures clustered together across the room. While I stood alone, a physical divide as sharp as the emotional one that had defined my life. If I refused, I risked breaking family peace. If I agreed, I surrendered yet another milestone to their script, that I was incomplete without Bianca's polish. The realization hit hard. They had never seen me as I truly was, an economist whose work had earned international recognition. To them, I was still the quiet girl at the piano, propped up by her sister. I squared my shoulders. No introductions, I said firmly. This is my presentation, mine alone. The air in the room shifted. This wasn't the usual script. And for once, I didn't care. 2 days later, the subject line glared back at me from my laptop screen. International Aid Foundation Gala, Contingency Plan. My stomach tightened as I clicked. Though I already knew what waited inside. Bianca's words sprawled across the message like poison, while my sister is certainly qualified in economic theory. She sometimes struggles with public speaking. I'd be happy to step in if she becomes nervous or runs short on material. Our parents agree this arrangement would benefit everyone involved. Beneath her note, my parents' enthusiastic reply sat like a knife between my ribs. This is an excellent suggestion. Odette has brilliant ideas but always benefits from Bianca's social polish. We're so proud both girls are working together. The room spun. I gripped the edge of my desk until my knuckles whitened. This wasn't passive favoritism, it was deliberate sabotage. Bianca had written directly to the event organizer. And my parents had endorsed it. Worse, this wasn't an isolated betrayal. I scrolled through my inbox. Pulse hammering. There it was. An email to the Economic Policy Institute where I'd been invited to speak. Bianca volunteering herself as co-presenter. Another to my university alumni panel. Slipping herself into my spotlight again and again. A trail of manipulation stretching back months. Maybe years. That evening, Mother's voice chirped over the phone. Oblivious to the fury in my chest. Aunt Margaret is coming for lunch tomorrow. She's excited about the gala. The next day, I arrived at my parents' home to find the dining room staged like theater. Father and mother at their thrones at either end. Bianca glowing beside them. The only open seat was at the far corner. As though even the chairs conspired to exile me. I've been looking forward to seeing you present. Odette, Aunt Margaret said warmly from across the table. Before I could reply, Bianca's glass clinked against the wood. I've chosen the most gorgeous midnight blue gown for our big night. It will photograph beautifully for the Foundation's website. Our big night. Mother patted her hand. We've told the Hendersons and the Blackwells that both Marshall girls will be on stage. They can't wait to see the sisters together. I never agreed to that. I said, knuckles whitening around my napkin. Father cleared his throat. I mentioned to Eleanor Bennett that Bianca could fill in if your speech runs short. The Foundation needs to keep donor interest high. The fork slipped from my hand and clattered onto porcelain. You did what? Across the table, Aunt Margaret's expression sharpened, her eyes flicking from my pale face to my family's casual betrayal. She said nothing then, but her silence carried weight. The rest of the meal unfolded in a blur of Bianca's chatter about hair, makeup, and seating arrangements. I picked at my food, invisible in my own story. When the plates were cleared, Aunt Margaret lingered behind, resting a hand on my arm. Her voice dropped low, firm. I need to tell you something. I've watched this for 30 years, first with your mother and me. Now with you and Bianca. It's time you stood up for yourself. Her words burned hotter than wine. For the first time, I felt my anger transform into something sharper, resolve. But Bianca wasn't finished. Monday morning, my phone buzzed with notifications as I stepped into the elevator at work. On Instagram, Bianca beamed, holding shopping bags, helping my brilliant but shy sister prepare for her big event. Hashtag proud sister, hashtag family support. The comments swarmed. So sweet. Teamwork. Even a few of my colleagues liked the post. By the time I reached the office, the whispers had started. Karen from accounting caught me in the break room. Your sister seems so excited to introduce you. Is public speaking not really your thing? I forced a smile. Actually, I'm the keynote speaker. Bianca isn't part of the program. Karen's eyebrows rose. Oh, I just assumed. By lunchtime, fragments of gossip trailed me through the halls. Family connections. Her sister knows everyone in charity circles. At 3 o'clock sharp, the blow landed. My office phone rang. Odette? Could you step in for a moment? Director Williams's tone was uncharacteristically formal. In his office, he gestured to the chair opposite. Something came up regarding the gala. Your mother called this morning. Ice flooded my veins. She called you? She mentioned your sister might represent the family at future events. I wasn't aware this was a family affair. The invitation specifically requested you for your expertise. His gaze held mine, steady and questioning. It's not a family affair, I said, heat climbing my neck. I was invited because of my research in sustainable development funding. My family has their own interpretation. That night, when I returned home, my apartment door was ajar. The faint perfume hit me before I saw her. Just dropping off some outfit options. Bianca called from my bedroom. On my bed lay my carefully organized notes, now reshuffled. Pages scribbled with her looping handwriting. She lifted one. I highlighted the parts you should emphasize. Added transitions to make it more audience-friendly. You always get too technical. You changed my presentation without asking? My voice cracked with disbelief. Just little tweaks, she said, waving a dismissive hand. Regular people tune out otherwise. After she left, I sat hunched over my bed. Hours spent piecing my slides back into order. Second-guessing every sequence. My chest felt tight. Doubts pressing in. What if she's right? What if I freeze? But Thursday brought unexpected relief. My phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Dr. Marshall? This is Eleanor Bennett from the International Aid Foundation. I wanted to confirm final details. We're thrilled to have you. Your research on sustainable development is exactly what our donors need to hear. Her words washed over me like cool water, steadying the firestorm in my chest. One more thing, I added cautiously. Could you ensure stage access is limited to authorized speakers only? Of course, Eleanor replied. We'll make the arrangements. That evening, I exhaled for the first time in days. I clutched my portfolio tighter. Not as armor this time, but as proof. Proof that I had been chosen for my work. Not as anyone's appendage. 3 days before the gala, I arrived at my parents' home for Sunday dinner. The scene was as carefully staged as ever. Bianca in the living room, draped in a dazzling emerald gown that caught the light like a lure. Mother fussed with the neckline, her voice syrupy with pride. This will sparkle perfectly under the stage lights. We've arranged for you both to arrive together. Odette, Bianca will handle the red carpet photos. Something in me shifted. Not the familiar nod of resignation but a hard, unyielding weight. No. The word emerged clear, startling even me. Mother's hands froze mid-adjustment. Excuse me? This is my professional achievement. Not a family talent show. My voice carried across the room. Steady, resonant. Father lowered his newspaper, his brow furrowing. We've always been a team. Why change now? Because I'm not a supporting character in my own life anymore. I stood, the burgundy of my resolve as vivid as the dress Bianca flaunted. I earned this invitation through years of research and expertise. Not charm, not connections, my work. The silence that followed felt like a seismic crack splitting the house in two. Later that evening, my phone chimed, a text from Aunt Margaret. I'd be honored to accompany you to the gala. Just us. A few minutes later, an email from Eleanor Bennett arrived. We've updated our security protocol. Only authorized speakers will be allowed stage access. Green wristbands will identify them. Relief washed through me. For once, the ground beneath me felt solid. But my family wasn't finished testing my resolve. The night before the gala, I unzipped the garment bag hanging in my closet. My chosen gown, an intricate navy design with delicate beadwork, hung limp. My breath hitched when I saw the small tear along the seam at the hip. Not accidental, precise, deliberate. For a heartbeat, my chest hollowed out with dread. Then I steadied myself. They hadn't counted on my backup plan. I slid the second dress over my shoulders. The burgundy silk hugging my frame with understated elegance. No glitter, no embellishments, just clean lines. Strength in simplicity, better than expected. I murmured to my reflection, smoothing the fabric over my hips. My own armor. When the text came from Mother, we're leaving in 10 minutes. Where are you? I ignored it. My heart raced at the defiance. But I called the car service I'd arranged the day before. Your driver will arrive in 5 minutes. Dr. Marshall, the dispatcher confirmed. 20 minutes later, the International Aid Foundation's glass facade loomed ahead, reflecting the last blush of sunset. I walked through the entrance alone, portfolio clutched to my chest like a shield. Dr. Marshall. Eleanor Bennett hurried across the marble floor, her practical heels clicking against the polished stone. You're wonderfully early. Let me show you the stage setup. The auditorium stretched vast and expectant. Rows of empty chairs like a silent jury. At the podium, Eleanor adjusted the microphone. The sponsors will sit here. She pointed to the front row. And this? She handed me a slim green wristband, grants exclusive access to the stage and preparation area. I slipped the band onto my wrist. Its color glowing against my skin. A small detail, yet monumental. My claim. My space. Back in the green room. I reviewed my slides. Economic models of sustainable development. Charts illustrating resource allocation. Work born of sleepless nights and relentless focus. As I rehearsed, two distinguished figures entered with Eleanor. Dr. Marshall. May I introduce Ambassador Chen and Dr. Abernathy? They've been eager to hear your findings. I rose, extending my hand. I'm honored. Thank you for your interest. My voice didn't tremble. 30 minutes later, the reception bustled. Laughter and the clink of glasses filled the air. Then came a commotion at the security checkpoint near the stage. Bianca's voice, sharp and rising, pierced the murmur of donors. This must be a mistake. I'm part of the presentation. She insisted, her emerald gown sparkling under the lights. I'm introducing my sister. I'm sorry, ma'am. The security guard replied evenly. Green wristbands only beyond this point. But I'm her sister. Bianca's protest grew louder, heads turning, whispers spreading like wildfire. My parents hovered nearby, father gesturing frantically, mother leaning in to murmur explanations to puzzled donors. From across the room, I caught my boss, Director Williams, watching the scene with raised eyebrows. He glanced at me, silently asking if I wanted him to intervene. I gave a small shrug and turned back toward the stage. Heat rose in my cheeks. But for once, the chaos wasn't mine to fix. Aunt Margaret, seated near the front, met my eyes and nodded with quiet solidarity. Dr. Reynolds, my colleague, leaned back in his chair, tapping his watch, our prearranged signal that he'd create a diversion if needed. I exhaled, shoulders squaring. The lights dimmed. The murmur died down. Eleanor appeared at my elbow, offering her arm like a queen's escort. Ready? She asked softly. More than ready, I replied, standing taller than I had in years. The ballroom fell into hush as the master of ceremonies stepped onto the stage. He tapped the microphone twice, his voice carrying across the glittering hall. Good evening, distinguished guests. Thank you for your support of the International Aid Foundation. Tonight, it is my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, the renowned economist, Dr. Odette Marshall. Eleanor gave my arm a quick squeeze before releasing me. I walked alone up the steps, each click of my heels on polished wood a declaration. For once, no one preceded me, no one waiting to share my spotlight. The podium loomed tall, its surface smooth beneath my palms. The spotlight warmed my face, not oppressive, but welcoming, like sunlight after a storm. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Bianca rising from her seat, smoothing her emerald gown, edging toward the stage steps. Father waved his program like a conductor summoning an orchestra, trying to catch the MC's attention. Mother leaned toward nearby donors, whispering loudly, both daughters are presenting tonight. Family tradition, you know. Bianca flashed her perfect smile, poised to climb. But the silver-haired security guard stepped smoothly into her path. Clipboard in hand. I'm sorry, ma'am. Green wristbands only beyond this point. Her tone was calm, but final. The murmur spread through the audience. Bianca's protests faltered under the weight of dozens of curious stares. I turned back to the microphone, steadying my breath. Good evening. I'm Dr. Odette Marshall, and tonight I'll be sharing research on sustainable economic development in rural communities. The words flowed, clear and unwavering. My slides lit up the screen behind me, graphs, models, data I had nurtured into a vision. I spoke of resource allocation, of microfinance structures, of the very people whose futures depended on policies too often reduced to numbers. My voice did not tremble. Pens scratched across notepads, tablets clicked with hurried typing. Ambassador Chen leaned forward, chin on hand, eyes intent. Even the waitstaff paused, listening. I would like to acknowledge those who truly supported me during this research journey, I said, meeting Aunt Margaret's gaze. Her proud smile lit like a lighthouse across the sea of faces. Eleanor sat near the front, nodding, her expression steady and encouraging. Bianca began applauding prematurely, forcing brightness into her voice. That's exactly what our family has always believed. Excuse me, interrupted the chairwoman of the International Aid Foundation, her voice polite but firm. I'd like to hear the rest of Dr. Marshall's analysis. A ripple of murmurs swept the hall. Bianca's words died in her throat. All eyes returned to me. For once, I was not the background. Not the afterthought. Not the shadow. When we empower overlooked voices within economic systems, I continued, my voice stronger, everyone benefits, not just those previously marginalized, but entire communities. Sustainable growth only occurs when individuals step into their own light, rather than existing in someone else's shadow. The applause thundered before my final words faded. It swelled, wave after wave, filling every corner of the ballroom. The MC returned, beaming, shaking my hand. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to share that tonight's gala has achieved record-breaking pledges. Dr. Marshall's research has clearly struck a chord. As I stepped down from the podium, business cards thrust toward me like offerings. Logos I recognized, the World Bank, the United Nations Development Program, the Global Economic Forum. One representative leaned close. Your resource allocation model is exactly what our Southeast Asia initiative needs. Another, we'd love to collaborate on your microfinance applications for our Africa program. I accepted them all, my hands steady, my heart racing not with fear, but exhilaration. Across the room, my family sat silent. Mother's smile had cracked, her fingers twitching at the tablecloth. Father leaned toward her, whispering urgently. Bianca's expression was something I'd never seen before, not smugness, not jealousy, but shock, genuine shock, as though the foundation of her belief, that I could not shine alone, had shattered before her eyes. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care. Their reactions were no longer the mirror by which I measured myself. The spotlight was mine. 6 months later, the morning sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows at the International Economic Summit in Stockholm. I stood behind another podium, scanning a room packed with diplomats, economists, and NGO leaders. Only this time, my voice carried without tremor, without hesitation, no microphone adjustment required. Before we break for lunch, I'd like to introduce Dr. Helena Rivera, whose groundbreaking research on agricultural economics complements our morning session. The words rolled naturally, no apologies, no throat clearing, no self-effacement. When a question came from the back, sharp, challenging, the kind designed to unsettle a speaker, I stepped away from the podium to engage directly. That discrepancy highlights a critical point about methodology, I said, locking eyes with the skeptical delegate. The room leaned forward as if tethered to my words. Even Ambassador Thornton, infamous for dismissing young scholars, nodded with grudging respect. My colleagues no longer prefaced their remarks with qualifiers like, though she's a bit quiet. Now they cited me plainly, as Dr. Marshall established in her recent paper. The transformation wasn't only in how they saw me, it was in how I saw myself, occupying space with shoulders back, eyes level, voice firm. Later that evening, I found myself once again at my parents' dining table. The same polished silverware, the same crystal glasses, the same seating hierarchy, a scene I once dreaded. Father cut into his steak. So this conference in Stockholm, was it a solo presentation or a panel? Solo, I replied, calmly buttering my bread, followed by a roundtable discussion. Bianca's fork paused midair. You know, I've been reading about audience engagement strategies. I could help you. Thank you, I interrupted gently, but I've got this covered. The words hung in the air like a bell that refused to be silenced. My parents exchanged glances but said nothing. The silence was different this time, not loaded with disapproval, but heavy with reluctant respect. The following weekend, Aunt Margaret hosted a small gathering at her garden apartment. Eleanor Bennett arrived with champagne. Dr. Reynolds came bearing an elaborate charcuterie board. The conversation flowed easily, untainted by competition, free of hidden barbs. To finding your voice, Aunt Margaret announced, raising her glass. And to those who actually listen. She handed me a small package. Inside was a framed photograph of me at the gala podium, captured in profile. Mid-gesture, my audience rapt with attention. On the silver frame, an engraving read, "Your spotlight." Weeks later, I sat in my office surrounded by framed awards. My calendar brimming with engagements from Geneva to Nairobi. On my desk lay the newest invitation. The World Economic Forum wanted me to deliver a keynote on sustainable growth. My phone buzzed. Mother's name flashing on the screen. She had called 3 times that week. Each conversation slightly less awkward. This time, her message was tentative. We'd like to attend your presentation at the local business forum. If you'll have us. I stared at the phone. The hum of the city beyond my window. For years, their approval had been the currency I thought I needed most. Now, I held something different, harder, brighter, self-forged. The question lingered like an echo. Can family relationships evolve after years of diminishment? Can forgiveness exist without reopening the door to old patterns? Or must distance remain the price of confidence hard won? I didn't yet know the answer. But I knew one thing with certainty. My voice would never again be silenced. The stage, at last, was mine.